Good evening, I'm Katy Tur in New York and for Chuck Todd. Welcome to MTP Daily. Guys, when it comes to the big battles facing Congress next year, everything is going to be viewed through a Trump lens. Whether it's DACA, infrastructure, government funding, Russia, or you name it. And we end 2017 with Republicans warming to Trump and Democrats warming to the idea of his resignation or his impeachment. Republicans are heading into 2018 with most of their Trump critics purged from the party or converted to Trump allies, or both. Take Senator Bob Corker, for example. He called the White House an adult daycare center. He said he wouldn't support the president's tax plan if it raised the deficit by a penny. He said he was leaving the Senate. Then he voted for the tax plan and talked about his newfound empathy for the president. Or he went from calling Mr. Trump a kook who was unfit for office to now complaining when people call the president a kook who's unfit for office. You can't make this stuff up. Or take the Trump love fest after the GOP passed the tax bill.
This has been a year of extraordinary accomplishment for the Trump administration.
Exquisite presidential leadership.
We would not be standing here today if it wasn't for you.
This is one of the great privileges of my life, to stand here on the White House lawn with the President of the United States, who I love and appreciate so much.
Moments ago, President Trump made an impromptu visit to the West Palm Beach fire station where he touted the tax bill as part of a historic first year on the job.
We have signed more legislation than anybody who broke the record of Harry Truman. And they were saying, if we get this big tax cut, because that's the legislation of all legislation, we have more legislation passed, including the record was Harry Truman, a long time ago, and we broke that record.
We're not sure where this comes from because he has not broken the record for signing bills in his first year. Forget Truman, he trails Clinton, Bush, and Obama in their first years. But as the president touts his agenda, there's a wave building against it from the other side. Because if Republicans have learned to stop worrying and embrace Mr. Trump, the evolution in the Democratic Party has dramatically gone the other way, much to the frustration of its leadership. 58 House Democrats voted to advance impeachment. A few are even suggesting he's mentally unfit. And many of the party's rising stars in the Senate want the president to basically self-impeach by resigning. But Democratic leaders don't want to talk about the president's impeachment or his resignation.
The left of our party is still annoyed with me for not impeaching President Bush for going into Iraq. What could be worse than that? It's not someplace that I think we should go.
So when you think about the enormous to-do list facing Congress in an election year, think about these three questions. How desperate is the GOP to stand with the president? How motivated is the Democratic Party to stand against him? And what do their bases want? Because often in politics, if the people lead, the leaders will follow. We're going to talk with members on both sides of the aisle. Joining me now is Kentucky Democratic Congressman John Yarmuth. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. What exactly does the Democratic Party stand for in 2018? Working with Donald Trump or impeaching Donald Trump?
No, we don't stand for impeaching President Trump. I think there are a lot of us, myself included, who believe that Donald Trump has committed impeachable offenses. But that doesn't mean that impeachment is a reasonable thing to pursue. Particularly, we're not in the majority, so we're not going to get it passed in the House. It takes 2/3 in the Senate. We'd never get close to that if we got an impeachment resolution passed. So it would just be a waste of time. On the other hand, I think it is appropriate for us to keep talking about the fact that this man deserves to be impeached. And I mean, in my case, the one thing that stands out for me is when he threatened to revoke TV licenses over questionable content that was questionable to him. To me, that's an abuse of power that rises to an impeachable offense. But that doesn't mean that we're going to spend any time talking about it, because again, it can't work.
I'm trying to follow you here. You introduced articles of impeachment, but then you tabled them. So are you saying that you need to
Actually, I didn't.
You didn't?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You did not?
No, I voted to table. Yes.
Yeah, but you also introduced them.
Right. I co-sponsored a different resolution.
So here's my question. So if you're co-sponsoring a resolution to introduce them, and you're all them. Is this trying to have your cake and eat it too? Are you trying to say, yeah, we should talk about impeachment, which you just were talking about a moment ago, but at the same time, it's not worthwhile to even try impeachment? It seems like those are in conflict with each other.
Well, we don't have the power to do it, and we don't have the votes to do it. So we'll never get an impeachment resolution to the floor. Now, if we take the majority back, that may be a different story.
Well, do you think maybe you should run in 2018 on trying to impeach the president? Is that your goal?
Well, that becomes a tactical consideration, and I think most of our leadership, and at least in the House side, has said we don't want to rile up the Republican vote. Right now, we have a huge energy advantage. And, you know, our voters are telling us every day, our base is saying, go after him, impeach him, please do.
Yeah.
But that's not going to help us win back control of the House. So
4 and 10
that's a political tactic.
Well, 4 and 10 of Democratic voters
tactic.
want to impeach Donald Trump. 7 and 10, I'm sorry, Democrats want to impeach Donald Trump. That's a lot of Democratic voters. If you're looking to ride this wave, do you disagree with the leadership when they say we shouldn't be running on this?
No, I agree with the leadership. We shouldn't be running on it.
Okay.
We should be running on how we make lives better for the American people. And we ought to be running on things like clean air and water, and the fact that this administration is trying to undermine that. We ought to be running on making voting expanded, not constricted. We ought to be running, again, on a fair tax code, not one that benefits the very wealthiest Americans. We ought to be running on infrastructure, because that's how you do create jobs. We ought to be running on doing something about student debt, which is one of the greatest impediments to a dynamic economy we have right now. And these are all things, by the way, that we could have done with that $1.5 trillion worth of borrowing that we're going to do because of this tax bill.
Are you also going to run on the idea that Congress can work together, can have bipartisanship, can bridge the gap between the two parties, and not just do this ping-pong effect that we're seeing where one party controls Congress and rams through their legislation without any support from the other side?
It would be wonderful if we had that kind of environment. And I understand you're going to have Charlie Dent on later. And Charlie's one of those people who is easy to work with across lines. Unfortunately, he's leaving the House. But there are a lot of us who talk.
You have some time in the next year, and that leads to the next question. Before 2018, is there anything that you see your party being able to work with Donald Trump on? Any compromise you can make?
Well, I think infrastructure is the perfect opportunity for us to do that, and of course immigration reform as well. I was on the part of the Gang of Eight in 2013 that worked on comprehensive immigration reform. I know we can work on a bipartisan measure to do that because we actually did it. So there are plenty of opportunities for us to do that. You know, this tax bill was bizarre because, unlike the Affordable Care Act, when we begged Republicans to work on it with us, they wouldn't let us work on tax reform with them. And it is unfortunate because to have the sustained confidence of the American people and to build confidence in Congress, we're going to have to do things in a bipartisan way.